Being 3 seconds to 2, I think we're safe enough to move to question time, and I'll call Senator Birmingham.
Thank you, President. President, my question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. Was the Minister for Health articulating the foreign policy of the Albanese government when he said yesterday, quote, "No self-respecting nation would fail to defend itself if attacked the way Israel has been. Israel has the right to defend itself and to respond to these attacks." End quote. Why did it take the Minister for Health to speak with more clarity than the Prime Minister, the Defence Minister or yourself as the Foreign Minister could manage?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank the Leader of the Opposition in the Senate for the question. I would make the point to him that we have in fact spoken about Israel's right to defend itself from day one. And I went back to the motion which we drafted, the bipartisan motion on immediately after October 7th horrific events, horrific attacks. And in fact in that motion that we put to the opposition, and that was ultimately supported on a bipartisan basis, there's reference to the fact that Israel has a right to defend itself. And in fact, my recollection is last week the Prime Minister made that same point. I said the same thing on Thursday. Prime Minister made the same point again on Friday, and the Deputy Prime Minister made the same point on the Sunday. In other words, that has been the consistent position. But I would make this point. What we also say is how Israel defends itself matters. What we also say is that international law matters. What we also say is that international humanitarian law, which protects us all, also matters. And that is a consistent position. And it may be a position that the opposition have difficulty with, to have a position which says very clearly we do believe that there is a moral imperative for the upholding of international law, which includes the protection of civilians, because that protects us all. It protects all of us. And Australia should always stand on the ground of adherence to international law, including relevantly the protection of civilians and the various other aspects of the Geneva Conventions and international law which protect us all.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Birmingham's first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister Butler expressly identified Israel's right to respond to these attacks, words that multiple government ministers had been asked about in recent week and indeed had obfuscated around. Does Israel's right to defend itself and to respond include the right to respond to Iran's missile attacks on Israel?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Wong.
I think in my press conference in Geelong on Thursday, went specifically to this point, Senator Birmingham, which is that Israel has a right to defend itself against Iran's attacks. And this is the problem with the political attacks from the opposition about this, is that they don't actually look at what we have said because they're not interested in what we have said. What they are interested in is creating a political division. But I would also make this point. The opposition seems to be of the view that the position we've articulated is somehow different to those of our principal allies. I'll quote from the G7's statement on October 3rd. Dangerous cycle of attacks and retaliation risks fuelling uncontrollable escalation in the Middle East. Therefore, we call on all regional players to act responsibly and with restraint. That same G7 statement also called for de-escalation in Lebanon.
Expired. Senator Birmingham, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Does the Albanese government agree that Israel's inherent right to self-defence necessitates it to remove the terrorist threat from its borders?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Wong.
Again, go back. I know that Mr Abbott wants to dictate what Israel's defence tactics should be from Australia. What we say, as a matter of principle, is that Israel has a right to defend itself, that it is also the case that international law is to be respected. I make the point that the G7 itself, again on October 3rd, made this statement, just so people are clear. We are also deeply concerned about the situation in Lebanon. We recall the need for a cessation of hostilities as soon as possible to create space for a diplomatic solution along the blue line consistent with UNSC Resolution 1701. So we are very clearly where the majority of the international community is at. You are prosecuting a different position, and we all know why.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walsh.
My question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. The Albanese Labor government is doing all it can to provide cost-of-living relief to Australians. From tax cuts to power bill relief, our policies are providing relief whilst putting downward pressure on inflation. Since we last met, the government has continued its work to get a fair deal for Australians at the supermarket, supporting the ACCC to crack down on misleading and deceptive pricing practices. Minister, how is the government continuing to provide relief to Australians, and how are Labor's back-to-back surpluses enabling the government to support Australians?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. I thank Senator Walsh for the question and for focusing on cost of living and the impact it's having on Australian households. We acknowledge that people are under pressure, but they would be under even more pressure if those opposite had had their way. Our economic plan is all about helping Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn, and our policies are making a difference. We've delivered a tax cut for every taxpayer, and that relief is seen in every fortnight's paycheck. We've delivered energy bill relief with $300 for every household and $325 for small business. We've increased rent assistance. We've made medicines cheaper, freezing co-payments and including support for concessional payments. We're reducing student loans and providing prac placements for students for the first time ever. Thousands of Australians are now attending TAFE, thanks to our free TAFE policy, with an additional 20,000 places from the 1st of January. And of course, since we last met, President, we've had the final budget outcome, and the Albanese Labor government has delivered the first back-to-back budget surpluses in more than 2 decades. Now, we don't do this as an end in itself, although the ability to deliver a surplus was something that, of course, eluded those opposite, despite the back-in-black mugs. The mugs that were commissioned, the I's were never dotted, the T's were never crossed. So the fact that we have done that, it's not an end in itself. It's a responsible way for the government to make sure that we are showing spending restraint, getting the budget in much better shape, lowering debt at a time when inflation is higher than we would like, lowering our interest payments, and making sure that we do have and can have the budget flexibility to respond should we need to in the future. These surpluses are about fighting inflation and making room for that cost of living relief.
Senator Gallagher, first supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, without the Albanese Labor government, it's clear that a coalition government would have forced Australia into recession. There would be fewer jobs, lower wages and higher taxes. Minister, how has the government struck the balance of maintaining jobs while putting downward pressure on inflation?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Walsh for that question too, because this has been the approach of the government, trying to make sure that we're able to maintain as many people in jobs, and we've seen such resilience and strength in the labour market, and that's a great outcome. But at the same time, making sure that we don't add to the inflation challenge. And this is, again, in other countries where we've seen, as inflation has moderated, the unemployment rate has ticked up quite considerably. We haven't seen that to that degree in Australia, and that should be something that this chamber welcomes universally. More people holding on to those jobs, getting paid better in those jobs, having the tax cuts come through their paychecks. But we have been working, and our whole fiscal plan has been about making sure we do balance those competing priorities, but also making sure we provide that cost of living relief which we see flowing through to households right now.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walsh, second supplementary.
Cost of living is the #1 issue that people raise with me across my state of Victoria, and so it's good to hear that the Albanese Labor government continues to provide relief whilst getting the economy back in order. What economic challenges have you and the Treasurer confronted since coming to government? And what policy changes have you implemented to improve the economy?
When you finish, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Well, I'm very tempted to take that interjection because our balance sheet is a lot stronger than it was when we came to government, and we have lowered debt. We have low interest payments on the debt. We have delivered 2 surpluses, and we are putting investments where we can to grow the economy in a productive way, and that is through some of those initiatives like the Future Made in Australia, like the National Reconstruction Fund, like all of our policies targeted to increase productivity, to make sure the budget's in much better shape, and to work hand in hand with the Reserve Bank as inflation remains higher than we would like. But we have also managed to ensure that we reshape the tax cuts. We've been getting wages moving again. We've got women taking up more hours at work and returning to the workforce with some of the support around our childcare subsidies. The gender pay gap is closing in a faster way than we've seen in some time. And these are all policies that are measured to support the economy.
Has expired. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. An article in The Australian today revealed that the Lebanese Muslim Association, an organisation awarded a $1.65 million social cohesion grant by the Albanese government, joined with the extremist organisation Hizb ut-Tahrir to host a rally last night to mark the 1-year anniversary of October 7, where speakers celebrated terrorist attacks as a day of celebration. Minister, do you think it's appropriate to give taxpayers' money for social cohesion to an organisation which supported a protest on the anniversary of the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well first, in relation to the last part of the question, I think we are united in our condemnation of what occurred on October 7th. It was an atrocity. It was not only the greatest loss of Jewish life in any single day since the Holocaust, but there were also so many other Israeli citizens who were harmed and are living with that. We also have hostages who are still held. We, I think, are united in our condemnation of Hamas, which is, as I keep reminding people in this place, a terrorist organisation that is dedicated to the destruction of the Jewish state and the Jewish people. And they are rightly condemned, as they should be. In relation to Hizb ut-Tahrir, I condemn those hateful comments, and I've consistently done that. Just as I have been clear about, I have done so publicly, Senator.
Order. Senator McKenzie, order.
And I have condemned the flying of the Hezbollah flag and symbols, and I think we all should. And we are at a time when we see a lot of division in our society.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, President. On a direct relevance, I asked the Minister about a grant for social cohesion to an organisation that hosted a rally celebrating October 7. She's not responded 90 seconds into the question.
Thank you, Senator Patterson, and I note that your question was broader than that, and I think the Minister is being relevant, and I will continue to listen carefully. Minister Wong.
Thank you. I was responding to the last part of your question, Senator Patterson. In relation to Hizb ut-Tahrir, we would say, I've said previously to you, Senator Patterson, that we take advice about our security intelligence agencies about where to list organisations. I won't speculate publicly about that.
Order.
In relation to the grant, the advice I have is no government funding has supported such events or rallies. $25 million was provided to the Australian Jewish community and to support, and $25 million to support Palestinian.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Separate media reports revealed that United Muslim Australia's Sheikh Ibrahim Dadoon praised the October 7 terrorist attacks at this rally, claiming victory is coming soon. This comes after the Assistant Minister for Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs, Julian Hill, invited United Muslims Australia to also apply for a social cohesion grant from the Commonwealth Government. Will the Prime Minister intervene to rescind these grants and ensure no more taxpayer money will go to organisations promoting extremist and anti-Semitic views?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you. What I was going to go on to say, the advice I have is $25 million was provided to support the Australian Jewish community and $25 million to support Australian Palestinian, Muslim, Christian and other communities affected by the conflict in the Middle East. Funding to the Lebanese Muslim Association was for trauma support, mental health and youth-related work. Now, I understand the point that the senator is making. I would respond in relation to was it Mr. Baydon, I think was the quote that you talked about. I'm sorry, I must have misheard you. Certainly in relation to the speaker at the rally that I thought you were referencing, the Home Affairs Minister has made, the Minister for Immigration has made clear he has asked his department to conduct a visa check.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. At the same event, an American guest speaker, Khaled Badoon, said, "Today is not a day that is full of mourning. Today is a day that marks celebration." The Department of Home Affairs later confirmed he is travelling here on a visa. How did Mr Badoon pass the character test for this visa, given that he publicly praised slain Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah on social media 1 week ago?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator Patterson. That was the speaker which I was referencing in my previous answer. First, I'd say very clearly that the government, all of us, condemn his comments. There is nothing to celebrate about October 7th, and it's a revolting thing to suggest that there is. As I understand, the Minister said clearly he's asked for advice from the department so he can consider this person's visa status. Obviously, the information that I'll take advice on the information that you outline. I would assume that would not have been brought to the Minister's attention before the department issued a visa.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Wong, representing the Prime Minister. Minister, in the last 12 months, Israel has massacred at least 40,000 Palestinians, including 17,000 children, and some estimates put the death toll at over 100,000 people. It has been the deadliest war for journalists and aid workers. These are not just numbers. These are real people with real lives, real dreams and hopes that have now been shattered. Israel has destroyed or damaged 93% of Gaza's schools, destroyed every university, and damaged or destroyed 89% of hospitals. In addition to the decades of Israel's oppression and occupation, for 12 months we have all seen a genocide live streamed on our devices. Minister, will the Labour government overcome its cowardice and take action against the genocidal apartheid state of Israel?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
First, Senator Faruqi, I think you'd do well to consider the advice of the head of ASIO, Mr Burgess, who said, given the division in our community, given the heightened tension, obviously this conflict is distressing. It is distressing for Australia's Jewish community. It is distressing for Australia's Palestinian communities and supporters. There are many Australians who know people who have died in this conflict. He said we all need to watch our language because there is a direct connection between inflamed language, inflamed tension and violence.
Senator Faruqi, order. You've asked your question.
Senator Faruqi, I might say it again because I think it's important that your party hears.
Order.
All right, through the chair. ASIO head, Mike Burgess, said we all need to watch our language because there is a direct connection between inflamed language, inflamed tension and violence. So you know, I would have hoped that...
Order.
Now, in terms of loss of life, I think you have heard me very clearly, including at the UN, talk about the loss of life. You have heard me, including at the United Nations General Assembly, in our national statement, speak very directly about the loss of life. We take a principled position that all lives, we mourn the loss of all lives, all civilian lives. The answer I gave to Senator Birmingham before about international law, that includes protection for civilians and the need to be proportionate in your response. That remains our position, and we will continue to work with the international community.
Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, for 1 year, you and the Labour government have tried to hide behind empty words and platitudes, which we heard again today. People can see right through your hypocrisy, your double standards and your gaslighting. Minister, where is your red line? And will you take even the small step of condemning Israel for its war atrocities and its war crimes?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Well, first, Senator, I have been very clear about why we argue for international law and the protection of civilians. You make a number of assertions which are ultimately questions for international tribunals, and what I would say to you is the use of that kind of language in this debate I do think is divisive and inflammatory. I would say to you that the reason we are advocating for a ceasefire in Gaza, the reason we are advocating, for us.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Thorpe, it is inappropriate to come in here. Senator Thorpe, come to order. Senator Thorpe, come to order. Senator Thorpe, take your seat. Senator Thorpe, take your seat or leave the chamber. I remind all senators that there is an opportunity to participate in a debate later today. Senator Cash, order. There is an opportunity to participate in a debate later today. I would ask you during question time to respect the chamber, to respect the need to listen in silence. Minister Wong, please continue.
We have argued for and voted for a ceasefire in Gaza because we want to protect lives. We have advocated for restraint and the protection of civilian lives. We have joined with others in relation to temporary...
Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Minister, the ICJ has made clear that Israel's occupation of Palestine is unlawful. Will you sanction Israel for its illegal actions and occupation?
Take the slogans down. Put the order. I have just finished informing the Senate that there is an opportunity to voice your concerns this afternoon. That was a disgraceful display which every single senator who raised the placard knows is contravention of the standing orders. You are order, Senator Faruqi. Senator Faruqi, you are not in a debate with me. You either remain orderly in this chamber or you leave. Order. Senator McKenzie, it does not need your input either. I'm the President. It is my responsibility to keep order in this place. and that display was completely disrespectful and out of order. And if you can't remain in the chamber and not pull stunts like that, then I invite you to leave. Minister Wong. Order. Order. Senator Gallagher. Minister Wong, please continue.
That is the sum total of the Greens' capacity change politics, is to hold up a poster in question time, not to work with other parties, not to go to the international community and engage with members of the G7 and the countries of the Middle East, as we do, to try and progress the cause of peace, not to work with others to support a ceasefire in Gaza, not to work with others, including the United Kingdom and others in the Middle East, to support a de-escalation in Lebanon to save lives. You think the end point of politics is to hold up a sign after you've told the photographers to come. Really?
Order.
That is the most progressive politics, is it? You hold up a sign after you've told the photographers to come.
Order. Senator Shoebridge, I will name you. I should not have to keep calling you and other senators to order. There's an opportunity later today to make your contribution. Senator Ciccone.
Gee, that was quick. All right. G'day, President. Now, my question. Yeah, g'day, guys. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong, and on a very serious issue. Overnight, as many of us will have seen, Australians witnessed moving scenes at the first of the government-assisted flights arrived in Sydney. Now, could the minister please update the Senate on the government's efforts to help these Australians and their immediate family members leaving Lebanon and returning safely to Australia, which I'm sure many have welcomed that opportunity?
Minister Wong.
Thank you to Senator Ciccone for the question, and I'm pleased to confirm, President, that 349 Australians, permanent residents and their family members arrived in Sydney last night on a Qantas flight from Cyprus, and it was heartwarming to see these Australians welcomed home by their loved ones. 3 further government-assisted flights from Cyprus back to Sydney and Brisbane are planned over the next 24 hours, and I want to acknowledge and thank Qantas and Qatar Airways with this repatriation. All those returning on government-assisted flights have right of entry or valid visas. These flights are the latest step in our government's efforts to help Australians in Lebanon to safety. As you would be aware, the government's travel advice for Lebanon has been do not travel. Why?
Order.
Wow.
Are you seriously questioning evacuating people?
Order.
This is about the evacuation of Lebanese Australians, Senator. Yeah, which we are facilitating.
And you have an issue with that?
We've been warning for Australians for many months.
Order. I asked those senators who couldn't be respectful in this chamber to leave. That applies to government senators and Green senators. If you can't listen in respectful silence, then leave the chamber. That's your choice. Minister Wong, please continue.
As commercial flights became more difficult to access, our government stepped in to work directly with airlines and with partners to secure seats for Australians. Over the weekend, we built on this with Australian government-assisted departure flights. So far, 1,215 Australians, permanent residents and their immediate family members have been assisted by this government to depart Lebanon on 6 flights. And I particularly want to thank Australian government personnel involved in this effort, including the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade staff in Beirut, in Cyprus and all those working here in Australia in the Crisis Centre. Just as we saw with the assisted departure flights from Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, these staff act with professionalism, courtesy and kindness in challenging circumstances. I thank them.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thanks, President, and thank you, Minister, for that update. And can I also thank your staff and the department and all the other officials who have been working around the clock to get Australians home very safely. Minister, could you also inform the Senate how many more Australians are seeking to depart Lebanon and what further steps have been taken to assist them?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. There are currently just under 4,000 Australians and their immediate families members who are registered with DFAT as wanting to depart Lebanon. 2 further flights from Beirut to Cyprus are planned for this evening our time, and there will be more in coming days to assist these Australians. But I do wish to make clear these flights are subject to the security situation, to operational capacity and to ongoing demand. Obviously, we will not be able to continue these flights indefinitely. So my message to Australians who remain in Lebanon and who wish to leave, again, is do not wait. Now is the time to go. Please take the first flight option offered to you. Australians in Lebanon should ensure they are registered with DFAT via the crisis portal or by calling the 24-hour Consular Emergency Centre on 612 6261 3305.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ciccone, second supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister. Minister, the situation in Lebanon is of deep concern to many Australians. Could you please update the Senate on how Australia is contributing to global efforts to prevent further escalation in the conflict in the Middle East?
Minister Wong.
Thank you. Australia is seeking to work with the international community towards long-term peace. We want a pathway, we want diplomatic solutions, and we want de-escalation across the region. The Australian government unequivocally condemns Hezbollah's continued attacks on Israel. We recognise Hezbollah as a terrorist organisation which has continued to attack Israel, just as we also condemn Iran's direct attacks on Israel. These are dangerous escalations. The international community is clear. This destructive cycle must stop. Unfortunately, there are some in Australia who seek to misrepresent the government's position and the position of other parties. I would remind the Chamber that Australia joined the United States, Canada, the European Union, Japan and others in a joint statement calling for a ceasefire, a diplomatic settlement that enables civilians on both sides of the border to return to their homes for safety. And days later, G7 leaders reaffirmed their call for de-escalation.
The time for answering has expired. Senator David Pocock.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Housing, Senator Farrell. Minister, despite the government's actions to date, Australia's housing crisis persists. Some 2/3 of Australians are currently experiencing housing stress. The government's Help to Buy and Build to Rent bills have stalled here in this chamber due to multiple factors, including a lack of policy ambition, the government not willing to actually negotiate, and also politics taking precedence over policy. This is despite a Guardian Essential poll finding that twice as many voters support Parliament passing these bills over blocking them. But it appears work on Australia's first National Housing and Homelessness Plan, which the government doesn't plan to legislate, has also stalled. Minister, does the government still believe we need a 10-year national plan as part of addressing this crisis?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Pocock for his question and his interest in his genuine interest in solving the issues of housing and homelessness in his home turf of ACT and across the country. Look, I don't accept the fundamental proposition of your question, Senator Pocock. This government is attempting to take action to genuinely resolve this issue. The reason that legislation, vital legislation to increase the stock of housing in this country has not passed this Parliament and therefore capable of starting the process of building more houses is because the Greens sitting to your left and the Coalition sitting to your right have combined to block that legislation. Well, let's face it. The opposition, when they were in government, did nothing to attempt to solve this problem. And now, when this government is seeking to help resolve the problem, then you're seeking to block it. So you did nothing when you were in government. You're lined up now with the Greens, and we saw just a moment ago what the Greens are interested in. They're interested in cheap political points. We're not about cheap political points, Senator Pocock. We're an action government. We are an action government. We believe in solving the problems that we inherited from the former government, and that's exactly what we are going to do. But we need to pass that legislation, and we need to pass it now.
Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. Be that as it may, consultation on your plan began more than 12 months ago, but we still haven't even seen a draft. I'm interested when the government will release a first draft of the National Housing and Homelessness Plan.
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, Senator Pocock, for his first supplementary question. Look, we are working with the states and territory as we speak. The new Minister Claire O'Neill, is working very, very hard to get movement on that project. But the truth of the matter, Senator Pocock, as I've seen in a whole lot of other areas where legislation is required to fix the problems that we inherited from the former government, a proper plan takes time, and it, of course, can't be developed overnight. We are developing this plan not only are we an action government, but we're also a government that seeks to consult and make sure we don't make the sorts of mistakes that the previous government...
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Thank you, Minister. My understanding is that your plan won't be legislated, so I'm interested why it's taking so long. But I'm wondering if you think that your government is responding to the breadth and depth of the housing crisis with the urgency and level of policy ambition that Australians expect.
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, Senator Pocock, for your second supplementary question. Look, this government is doing absolutely everything it possibly can to seek to resolve this issue. 32 billion. I know it might be a joke to you, Senator Pocock, but it's $32 billion of spending, more spending in the last budget, on housing and homelessness than in the entire period of the former government. That's how committed this government is to seek to resolve that issue. I wish I could click my fingers and solve the problem overnight, Senator Pocock. I can't do that, but what we are doing is everything in our power to put legislation through this parliament, blocked by your colleagues on the left and the right of you there. We will eventually get this legislation through.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Van.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs and Cyber Security, Senator Watt. Minister, electric vehicles are crucial to reducing emissions and achieving our Paris targets. However, growingly, they are connected vehicles connected to the grid, posing a national security risk depending on their state of origin. The Australian Signals Directorate has released Secure by Design foundations to help technology manufacturers. As international standards move towards mandatory cyber security requirements, will the Australian Government consider incorporating these Secure by Design principles into legislation and/or regulation as required?
Thank you, Senator Van. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Van, for the question. I am aware that Senator Van is a supporter of the increased rollout of electric vehicles, which is also something the Albanese government has worked hard to increase. We know that, fortunately, we now do have a government that believes in electric vehicles, unlike what we saw for 10 years. It turns out that electric vehicles do not end the weekend. Who would have thought? Just as we never had $100 lamb roasts or a number of other scare campaigns that we saw for 10 years. So we've moved beyond that. We are now seeing electric vehicles roll out. But Senator Van's question is a serious one, and we obviously do take seriously any matter to do with national security, whether it's arising from these matters or anything else. Senator Van, you'd be aware that Australia has now passed significant reforms that will give Australians more choice around cleaner and cheaper cars. We're focused on giving Australians more choice. We will take advice from our security agencies on the matters that you've raised, and we will follow that advice. I have seen some claims recently by such eminent thought leaders on climate change as Mr Barnaby Joyce on these matters. He seems to be worried about imported batteries. The problem for the coalition is that when we put forward the Future Made in Australia package, that included $500 million to develop a battery manufacturing industry here in Australia, they voted against that as well. So they don't like imported batteries, they don't like homegrown batteries, they just don't really like batteries, and they certainly don't like a future, and they don't like it being made in Australia. They just don't like anything. I don't really know what they like. They don't want batteries, they don't want electric cars, they don't want climate change, they don't want change. They just don't want a lot of things. Senator Van, I know you're not in that category anymore, and we're happy to work with you further on these issues.
Time for answering has expired. Senator Van, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The Department of Home Affairs recently released the Protective Security Policy Framework that mandates government entities identify and manage risks associated with foreign ownership, control or influence in their technology assets. What else is the government doing to given the pervasiveness of devices connected to the Internet of Things, what else is the government doing to safeguard Australia's technology infrastructure,
thank you,
both
Senator
large and
Van.
small?
Your time for asking has expired. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President. Thanks, Senator Van. As you mentioned, there are a range of other issues arising when it comes to the security of newly developed devices, particularly when it comes to cyber security. The Albanese government is committed to keeping Australians safe and will make decisions based on our own interests and on the advice of our security agencies. Our government is monitoring the developments in the United States on connected vehicles, and the Department of Home Affairs here in Australia has been proactively engaging with the US government to understand the implications of any proposed regulation. Connected vehicles are an important part of our transport infrastructure and will provide significant benefits to Australia, but they also collect significant amounts of data which can be accessed by malicious actors. The Australian government is bringing forward a range of measures under the 2023 to 2030 Australian Cyber Security Strategy to strengthen the nation's resilience against technology-related harms, and I'm sure that those consultations that are occurring with the US at the moment will add to that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Van, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister, and for acknowledging what is happening in the US at the moment. I think they're seeing something that all countries should take notice of. But how will the Australian government address the risk from foreign-made vehicles, especially with those that are autonomous, but particularly those electric vehicles that we're going to need to meet our emissions targets?
Thank you, Senator Van. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President. Thanks, Senator Van. Well, as I say, we have these matters under active consideration at the moment and are in dialogue with the United States. About them. Unfortunately, we don't have an Australian car industry anymore, just as we wouldn't have an Australian battery industry if the coalition had its way either. I know it is a little confusing to understand what the coalition's plan is on this, because we do have Mr Joyce out there saying that he doesn't like imported batteries, while we've got the rest of them saying they don't like homegrown batteries. And we saw Senator McKenzie, the Infrastructure and Transport spokesperson for the coalition, say it's not the Coalition's plan to ban Chinese-made vehicles. So maybe the Coalition's plan is to have no vehicles at all. They don't want to ban Chinese vehicles. They don't want Australian-made vehicles. Maybe it's back to the horse and buggy day under the Coalition. We certainly know that's their approach when it comes to policy generally, but we'll be continuing to work on these cybersecurity matters.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. Project Marinus began in 2017. For more than 7 years, this project has literally been a pipeline dream of Tasmania, Victorian and the Australian Government. Construction for the project isn't meant to start until 2026, with the first cable to be ready in 2030. A second cable, if that ever goes ahead, will be ready by apparently 2033. Energy market volatility around the world has blown the cost of undersea cables out of the water, and this has been worsened by incompetent management at Marinus Link and a clueless Tasmanian government. But almost every metric, it seems that the Marinus Link isn't on track to be ready on time, let alone to be built at all. Minister, are you confident this project will be delivered on time?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President, and I thank the Senator for her question. I know that the Senator has a long period of advocacy for Tasmanians and their interests. She's right that projects like this do have long lead times, and she is also right in saying that for a very long time nothing happened on Marinus. The former government talked a very big game, but they did not fundamentally progress the project. So the former minister, Mr Taylor, said of this project that it would provide the affordable, reliable, sustainable electricity that's not just required here in Tasmania but is required in the mainland. And he said that, but it didn't get anywhere, did it? And it's a shame because the AEMO ASP in 2024 this year finds that that project remains an actionable project and it provides hundreds of millions in net market benefits. Now, the government has made progress. We are actively managing the cost pressures that the Senator refers to in her question. In September 2023, governments together revised their agreement in recognition of the impact of rising project costs. The new agreement prioritises delivery of the first cable, which delivers close to 2/3 of the total project benefit for the NEM, and the Commonwealth also increased its equity stake in the project and increased the concessionality of the Commonwealth's debt finance. So we're seeing action. In August, the project company signed contracts for the high-voltage cables, and in May they executed the contract for the converter stations. So this progress is because this government is actually working constructively with the states through Rewiring the Nation. And those opposite actually propose now, as I understand it, to abolish Rewiring the Nation and all of the progress that has been made on Marinus with it.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Lambie, first supplementary.
Thank you. There is a long line of critics that say Tasmanians will be the losers of this project. Tasmanians are already facing increased energy bills. The Australian Government has agreed to provide underwriting in relation to that agreement through the Rewiring of the Nation program, as you said. Minister, what guarantee can you offer Tasmanians that their power bills will be reduced when the Marinus Link project comes into effect?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, once delivered, Marinus Link will put downward pressure on energy prices, and that's why we are working with the states and territories through Rewiring the Nation to deliver it. Now, we've now seen that those opposite haven't changed. They're promising to scrap Rewiring the Nation to pursue this expensive nuclear scheme against the advice of the experts, I will say, the most expensive form of energy that there is. That's their plan, and in relation to Tasmania, it explicitly rules out jobs for Tasmanians and only guarantees higher power bills. Marinus Link is a crucial transmission project. It will provide huge benefits to Tasmania and the mainland. It will deliver jobs in Tasmania and Victoria, with both states estimated to see up to an additional 2,400 jobs at the peak of first cable construction. with over 1,400 of those in Tasmania during peak construction and a $2 billion in additional economic activity.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie, second supplementary.
The ownership of Marinus Link is now 40% owned by the Australian Government, 33.3% owned by the Victorian Government and just 17.7% by Tasmania. Tasmanian and Victorian economies have actually driven off a cliff, but Tasmania still says they're committed to the project. Minister, as the biggest shareholder, has the government sought assurances from the Victorian Government that their commitment to the project is assured, and when was that last checked?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, all three governments remain committed to Marinus Link, and that is because they understand the significant benefits that the project will deliver to energy customers in Tasmania and on the mainland. Now, I've already talked in my answer to your first supplementary question about the jobs benefits. But the other benefits, of course, include reliability. This will improve reliability in the NEM. Better utilisation of existing Tasmanian generation, with the first cable delivering an additional 750 megawatts of firm supply to the mainland at times of peak demand, especially in Victoria. It also provides a measure of security for Basslink. That's additional security for Tasmania. It's important redundancy for that Basslink cable. And the second cable, which will be considered after the final investment decision is taken for Cable 1, will support investment in Battery of the Nation projects as well as Tasmanian renewables, which will put downward pressure on electricity prices.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Bilyk.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. Minister, we know that the Albanese government is tackling cost of living pressures for Australians, including through providing every single Australian a $300 rebate on their energy bill. What else is the Albanese government doing to help Australians put downward pressure on their power bills?
Thank you, Senator Bilyk. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, the senator is right. Supporting households in meeting cost of living challenges is this government's #1 priority. We do know that many families are doing it tough, and it's why every time a family opens their electricity bill this year, it will be cheaper as a consequence of this government's energy price relief policies. And we're providing every single Australian household over 1.25 million eligible small businesses as well, with real relief to help with the cost of living. Now, there are some promising signs. Updated inflation figures showed electricity prices fell 17.9% in the year to August. But there is more to do. Our government is investing in lower power prices by investing in renewables and firming capacity like batteries. And Australians know that renewable energy means savings. It is why Australians have led the world in rooftop solar. There are now more than 1 in 3 Australian homes with panels. And it's why our government's Energies Plan supports Australians to directly take control of their energy use by installing household solar and batteries. It's not possible, if you rent or live in an apartment, to do this on your own. So we're also investing in community solar and batteries. And just last week, we unveiled a new joint community solar and storage project with the Queensland Miles Government that will see up to 5,500 households in Caloundra and in Townsville set to save up to $800 a year on their electricity bills. Now, this is because we listen to the experts. We know that a mix of technologies will deliver reliable and clean power to Australians, and that is backed by CSIRO, it's backed by AEMO as the least cost pathway. It's all part of the Reliable Renewables Plan. It's the plan put together by experts for affordable, reliable
Thank you,
energy.
Minister. Senator Bilyk, first supplementary.
Thank you for that answer, Minister. Now, on last night's episode of Four Corners, former Liberal Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull described nuclear power in Australia as recklessly stupid and dangerously stupid.
Order.
And that there are plenty in the Coalition Party room that know this is nonsense. Could the Minister explain how Labor's Reliable Renewables Plan, backed by the entire Labor caucus, is helping to provide the policy certainty required to deliver affordable energy to
Senator
Australians?
Bilyk. The time for asking has expired. Minister McAllister.
You're right, Senator Bilyk. Plenty of people in the Coalition Party room know that this is nonsense. Well, our Reliable Renewables plan takes a different approach. We're cleaning up the mess in the energy system that was caused by a decade of denial and division by those opposite. We are providing the policy certainty that is necessary to get investment flowing after 22 failed energy policies. That's 22 across there. But here's the thing. Not one of those, Senator Bilyk, not one of those included nuclear. And here's another thing that former Prime Minister Turnbull said on Four Corners last night. He said this. He said there was nobody in any sort of senior responsible position during my time as Prime Minister who took nuclear power seriously from an economic point of view. It doesn't make economic sense, and it's why we are investing in firmed renewables, but Mr Dutton will serve up the most expensive form of energy.
Expired. Senator Bilyk, second supplementary.
Thank you so much. Could the minister explain how Labor's Reliable Renewables plan to put downward pressure on prices for households compares to alternative policy options like nuclear energy?
Thank you, Senator Bilyk. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, the approach we take is to listen to the experts. So AEMO and CSIRO say we need reliable renewables now, not expensive nuclear energy sometime in the 2040s. A new independent analysis from IEFA shows that nuclear will add an average of $1,200 a year to a four-person household's bill.
That's what happens when
it's a lot of money, $1,200. Now, the opposition, of course, love to talk. They love to talk about the American experience of nuclear energy. Well, what about this first-person account? First-person account from Anna Harmer on Four Corners last night, and I'll quote her. She said they were telling us everything was going to be okay with this plant, that it would be on time and it would be on budget. It's over budget and we are paying for that. Well, does that sound familiar? Families are already paying the price for your failed energy policies, and if this pipe dream comes to fruition, they'll pay even more.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Sharma.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. I refer the Minister to her recent call at the United Nations for a clear timeline for the International Declaration of Palestinian Statehood. The Minister also stated that there can be no role for terrorists in Palestinian self-determination. Is the elimination of terrorists like Hamas from the governance of the Palestinian territories a precondition for recognition, or would the Minister's clear timeline override that objective?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and Senator Sharma. If I may take the opportunity to acknowledge the contribution last night from both you and Senator O'Neill. Both of them were very moving, I thought. In relation to the progress towards a Palestinian state, you, with your knowledge of the region, I would surely understand, Senator, that there is no likelihood of long-term peace and security for Israel unless the international community deliver ultimately on the promise that was made when it established the State of Israel, which was that there would be two states, the State of Israel and a state for the Palestinian peoples. And you would also understand that this is something the international community has been seized of. Now, I have made it clear that we see no role for terrorists such as Hamas in the governance of a future Palestinian state. And unlike someone in this parliament, I actually do believe that a Palestinian state is necessary both as a matter of justice and the delivery of what the international community has promised, but also for the security of the State of Israel. You are an advocate, for example, of the Abraham Accords. You're an advocate for Saudi normalisation. Saudi Arabia has made clear, unless this issue is dealt with, it's not in a position to normalise. So if we can avoid, just for a moment, the divisive domestic politics, the reality is we have to work towards a two-state solution. because that is the only pathway to peace. We have a conflict where we have seen not only the horrific attacks on October 7, but in the aftermath, in terms of the response, we've seen over 11,000 children killed. Let's just pause to think about what that means.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Sharma, first supplementary.
So you also spoke in your speech at the United Nations about the need for a reformed Palestinian Authority. Is a reformed Palestinian Authority a prerequisite for any recognition, or again would your clear timeline override that objective?
Thank you, Senator Sharma. Minister Wong.
Senator, reform of the Palestinian Authority is something that many parties have spoken about. It's not my idea. It's a proposition that others, including the United Kingdom, a Conservative government, in fact, in the United Kingdom, has spoken about this, as well as the United States. This is a mainstream idea. Now, Senator, I know that you hosted the Australian Jewish Association and hosted a screening of Whose Land. I know that that there are those that don't support two states. Matter for you whether or not you think that's consistent with your party's position. What I would say is I do not believe, I think the international community does not believe, that there is long-term peace and security for the people of Israel unless this issue is ultimately dealt with. Now, it is, well, the international community made a commitment to this, Senator McKenzie, at the time it established the State of Israel. Let's understand this has always been an issue that the international community has been seized on.
Senator Sharma, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, given the uncertainties and inconsistencies in Labor's position on this issue, will the minister guarantee to not recognise a Palestinian state ahead of the next election and to instead take a clear policy on how or when Labor would undertake recognition to the next election?
Thank you, Senator Sharma. Minister Wong.
We're not going to be looking at election timelines on something as important as this, Senator, so you might want to think about that, but that is not the way I'm thinking about it. What I am thinking about is how we work with the broader international community, including the United States, including the United Kingdom, including many members of the General Assembly, many members, including the European Union, and the UAE and Saudi Arabia, Indonesia and so many others who are looking how we can help towards that pathway to peace and a political horizon for the resolution of a Palestinian state has to be part of that. We will keep working for peace. Others might want to keep working for division here in Australia.
Thank you,
and on that, President, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Beg your pardon. Minister Wong.
If I can add to an answer from question time, I think I misspoke and said it was a Qantas flight that landed that I was referencing. It was in fact a Qatar flight. No, and the reason I wanted to say that is because I did want to recognise that Qatar Airways has been of great assistance, along with Qantas, in providing such flights.